Okay, so nice of you to come back.
You're welcome.
7 years or 14 years, well, it's part of the white magical process to rebuild yourself according to an ideal model which your soul is projecting into your consciousness. In other words, you wouldn't want to say egoistically, what would I like to be like? You want to say that from a soul perspective. What does my soul conceive for me as the ideal model, or what do I as a soul conceive as the ideal model? And then we could use that image and we could build it and we could impress it on the vital airs. We could also, DK tells us, to use that image in our heart center. The image of an ideal model of our personality life. It's part of the Master in the Heart meditation. Only he says that for the mental types, you can use the ideal model exercise. Because some people are averse to the devotional aspect, which the Master in the Heart seems to suggest. Okay, so we've just been doing, forms are of four kinds. Okay, vibration causes forms. Forms are of four kinds. Okay, see, this is all chopped up, unfortunately. Okay, well, Mimi, you can read this.
The form of the environment. This is really the evolutionary working out of the involutionary group soul. It relates to our contacts, not just exterior, but on the inner planes as well. In similarity of vibration comes coherency. When therefore a man raises his vibration and builds anew from the beginning and alters consequently his key, it results in dissonance in his surroundings and subsequent discord. Therefore, under the law, there comes always to the striver, after the mysteries and the manipulator of the law, a period of aloneness and of sorrow, where no man stands by, and isolation is his lot.
See, and he's given us so much information in esoteric astrology, which we can cross-reference back to what he gave here. And again, we're dealing with the planet Vulcan. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So the form, what are you surrounded by? It relates to our contacts, inner and outer, and I thought this was very interesting. In similarity of vibration comes coherency, or should we say, at least there should be harmonious vibration. Similarity or harmony. In other words, they say that opposites attract for a time, but eventually like attracts like. So the law of attraction and repulsion is really that. It's not only attraction, it also involves the cleavage which separates similars from dissimilars. And as people are attracted to different groups, they are attracted away from certain groups. So it's not only attraction always goes with repulsion. Now comes the circumstance that many of us are familiar with. We raise our vibration purposefully, and then it is said of us, or when people analyze a relationship, that A outgrew the relationship, or B outgrew the relationship, So someone outgrows the relationship, or the environment, or the former environment. I just don't belong here anymore, I just don't fit. And aloneness is the result, because you separate yourself. In other words, through the augmentation of frequency comes separation from that which is not augmented. So augmentation of frequency leads to separation from the from the original environment. And this is precisely how it works at the fourth initiation under Vulcan and the fourth ray, because there's a very strong fourth ray component to Vulcan. It's probably a monadic component. There's a sacrificial will involved in this fourth ray. And you submit yourself to doing the spiritual will, and it separates you from all those who will not do it. So the depths of aloneness are experienced here, and what DK calls the Elijah complex, where you find yourself isolated between the sides who cannot get along and in the depths of aloneness. And DK also talked about the Gethsemane experience, alone next to a rock. Everybody's asleep. Nobody will watch and pray. The Christ is alone next to a rock, and Vulcan rules the mineral kingdom. So this depths of aloneness is achieved when he's passing through the preparation for the sixth initiation. Either, so we say Christ in the garden, or let's say Christ Jesus in the garden. The fourth and sixth initiation. If you read in, he talks about these blinding experiences, that these veils that lie before each of these important initiations, and it's in chapter 10. And it wasn't only Jesus who faced a very tough situation. The Christ faced something even stronger. Let's see, how does he... well, I don't want to go looking for that. But it's in chapter 10 of the Rays and the Initiations. And it's this impenetrable wall of blackness that he faces, and he has to move through that. And he's in the depths of agony because it's a question of spiritual will. It's not about crucifixion for him, he experienced that before. But it's about what kind of will he do. And finally he resolves it by saying, Father, not my will, but thine be done. And that's not about crucifixion. That's about choosing a different way of redeeming humanity according to shambolic will. That's what we're told. So, in a lesser degree, this comes to all. And to the arhat, or initiative of the fourth degree, this complete isolation is a characteristic feature. And Vulcan is a major planet at the fourth degree. And why is this? Vulcan is building and shattering. And at the fourth degree, what do we have? The consummated causal body, built, is shattered. As a matter of fact, what's very interesting is we're given 7 ways of destroying the causal body in Letters on Occult Meditation. They are very interesting, different methods according to the soul ray, either 1 through 7. The first ray method is shattering, and it's related to the hammer stroke of Vulcan, cracking the egg, as it were. So Vulcan really has a big role to play at this initiation. Here is the Arhat preparing for this initiation. He stands midway between life in the 3 worlds and that in the world of adepts. His vibration does not synchronize prior to initiation with the vibrations of either group. In other words, how interesting. In other words, we say it's a condition of inharmony at the 4th initiation. His vibration does not synchronize with either group. So Vulcan, Ray 4, initiation 4, Ray 4, and lack of harmony with either group because he is not on the fixed cross and he is not on the cardinal cross. He's not on either one at the fourth initiation. So this, he experiences the depths of aloneness. But what's also interesting is that later Vulcan rules the heart of the sun. So those are the compensations made available at that point. And you would never think of Vulcan as ruling the heart of the sun, but DK says it is associated with the heart of the sun. And
rules or is associated?
well, okay, let's look for the exact thing, because I should never use a word rule when I'm not speaking strictly of astrology. So association is probably correct. Vulcan, heart, sun. Vulcan, the one who reveals that which is deeply hidden and brings it up into the light, esoterically the heart of the sun. Monadic ray. Just remember when I said the other day, watch out for the word esoteric, because it always reveals the monadic ray. He's doing it again. Remember when he said esoterically, Saturn, Neptune and Uranus, ray 3, 2, 1. Now he's doing it with Vulcan. Esoterically, the heart of the sun.
So would that mean exoterically it is Venus, Jupiter, Neptune?
Let's see. Venus, Jupiter and Neptune, they are particularly connected with the second initiation, those three. But a planet can be connected with more than one initiation. I think basically what he's saying here is that the heart is the fourth chakra, and Vulcan ruling Taurus, which brings in the fourth ray, and Vulcan brings out this kind of beauty of love at the point of crucifixion, which is again ruled by the four. I'm using a little bit of what I would call inference here. But when I added them all together, I found that the fourth ray monad correlated most with Vulcan, who was the worker in metal and bringing beauty out of his very hard work with the concrete mineral kingdom. Another thing too, if I can put it here, which kingdom is the mineral kingdom? Is it the first? Is it the seventh? Is it the fourth? Okay, mineral kingdom is the seventh and the first, and counting down from the human kingdom, it is the fourth. So Vulcan has a particular relationship in both ways, ray 1 and ray 4, with the mineral kingdom, and he always does good work, beautiful work in fact. Vulcan also rules Taurus, where the new group of world servers are found on the fourth ray. There are many, many fourth ray associations. But it's really interesting because his mother threw him out of Mount Olympus because he was so ugly. So his beauty was not external. Vulcan's beauty was internal. So Vulcan, the heart of the sun. Now, what is the heart of the sun? Symbolically. It is the soul of the solar logos, correct? The causal body, ego, of the solar logos. So Vulcan has a very close relation to the second ray also. And here's the theory. Ray 5, 6, 7, and 4. When monadic, cannot remain that way. in other words, they are only subrays. If you hear of any human being who has a 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th ray monad, which they do, and any planet with a 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th ray monad, that's not the final ray. It's just a subray. In other words, here's my theory, anyway. 4th ray Vulcan has the 2nd ray as its major monadic ray. 5th ray Mercury has the 3rd ray as its major monadic ray. 6th ray Venus has the 2nd ray as its major monadic ray. Now, there is no, well, there might be. I could put it like this, and this, I think Nicholas and I might agree on this one, that 7th ray Jupiter has the 1st ray as its major monadic ray. And so this explains a lot that happens among Arhats and Chohans, and here's the Chohan on the 4th ray, the Chohan on the 5th, 6th, 7th. The only major monadic rays that can exist are 1, 2, and 3. So all monadic rays of aspect have got to resolve onto 1, 2, or 3. It looks like it's raining.
Yes, it is.
It could reduce the audience. You will have chairs. And this applies to you too. Now I have another theory, that in esoteric psychology 2, you are given 7 monadic rays and how they first come into incarnation. And any one of us could be any one of those 7 monadic rays. However, we don't stay that way for the entire duration. One day we resolve. And here's how I think we resolve. That on the monadic plane, there are 7 possibilities for every monad. And your monadic ray on the monadic plane can be any one of 7. But your major ray can only be one of 3. And the resolution of the monad is the ultimate alchemical release of the volatile essence into the sea of fire. And in the sea of fire, there are 3 monadic centers. And every monad belongs to one of those 3. This is the theory. Rain on the truth. What can I say? This could be a little awkward.
I'll do some cardboard cutouts so you don't feel alone. But sit them on little chairs.
Yeah. All will be fine. But in other words, what I'm saying something to you that I've often said, you have 2 monadic rays. Just like you have 2 soul rays.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. 1 major, 1 minor. Well, if you don't think that's true,
No, we didn't. But we just want to
just go to page 18.
You're not saying no, you're just asking.
When you say there's sub-rays of the 1, 2 or 3, I've read that it'll be 3. All the others are just a sub-ray of row 3, is that right?
What you're talking about there is the rays of aspect are all, the rays of attribute are all contained in the third ray. But while that's true, that's a different thing that I'm talking about. Okay, here it is. The soul rays dominate the personality. The personality rays then become one ray, and in their turn become subservient to the dual ray of the soul. Again, therefore, 3 rays are blended and fused. The soul rays dominate the personality, and the 3 become again the one, as the dual ray of the soul and the blended ray of the personality vibrate to the measure of the highest of the soul rays, the ray of the soul's group, which is ever regarded as the true egoic ray. So there's much to ponder there. There are different interpretations, but it can all be worked out because, well, I don't know, I'm deviating. I don't want to deviate. But basically, every point in the spiritual triad has 2 rays. And there is a part of the spiritual triad that relates to your monadic ray, and it never changes. And there is a part of the spiritual triad which is the same as your soul ray. The same ray. All the permanent atoms of the spiritual triad have the same ray. Every one of them. Atma, Buddhi, Manas, they all have the same ray. And the causal body is built on that ray. So the spiritual triad also has 2 rays. One ray coming from the monadic level, and the other ray, which is the prototype of the ray of the causal body or the soul. So DK didn't give all of this to us in one place. He scattered all of these hints all over, but if you piece them together, you will see that the 7 must become the 3, eventually. And that you find yourself as a solar being on the logoic plane. In other words, if you're content with being a planetary being, you can stay right there. Because the planetary logos is etherically focused on the monadic level. But the solar logos is etherically focused on the logoic level, and the monad is that which finds its home within the sun. So ultimately, our monad, that's a direct quote, that which finds its home within the sun. In initiation, human and solar. So ultimately, as a monad, we belong in the sun. And that's why when we focus on the logoic level, we get our main monadic ray, our major monadic ray. And, it's hard enough to know what your soul ray is. So you have to kind of trace things up and up and up and try to get the feel of the groups that you are with and your long-term destiny and what it would be like for you if you were a detached monad. What is the feel of that? This is not something to be solved overnight. We would be doing well enough if we simply had our soul ray and we learned how to express it according to the plan in one of the 10 areas of service that DK laid out. That would be quite enough. But for those of us who are interested in ray theory, we've got to treat it like a science and, apply ourselves to aspects of it that cannot yet be totally clarified. But I believe the theory holds water. And what is the final major monadic ray? 1, 2, or 3? Now, what I think, he says that most of the monads that travel through our Earth scheme are on the 3rd ray, the majority. Now, it doesn't mean you are. It's just the majority. Most of the monads in the solar system are on the 2nd ray. But on our planet, the majority is the 3rd ray. So this is esoteric psychology again. Let's take a look here. I think it's page 99 or something. 3rd ray monads. I don't know. A hint is here conveyed as to the prevalence of 3rd ray monads among the sons of men. The ray of active intelligence expressing itself through the 7 ray types, very interesting, is above everything else the ray upon which the majority of human monads will, particularly at this time, watch out for his qualifier, particularly at this time, be found. We shall therefore find the following psychological types, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then he goes on. I think that's very interesting. But when he says that the majority are ray 3 monads, does he mean on this level or on this level? And that's the question that I'm asking myself. Maybe it's on the highest level. And maybe otherwise all these submonadic rays can be found on all of them without distinction. You see, the plot gets thicker all the time. You have to read between the lines, always realizing you could be wrong, but you do your best. DK has written about 100 books in one book. It's just all these strata of interpretation which reveal themselves to you as you reach the next stratum. And we get to this level, you say, oh, I didn't see that. And to the next and the next. And then you start seeing things. And I believe that this is what you see. Or could see. Now, let's go on and pretend we're actually working on the same subject. The next form, what do we have? We have the form of the personality. We have the form of the environment, and now the form of the devotee. And who would like to read this? Okay, I know that it's English and all that. Here, Asger, would you do that?
The form of the devotee, yes, I mean just that word, but it expresses an abstract idea. Each person at every degree has his devotion.
Mm-hmm.
That for which he lives, that for which the ignorance, the knowledge, or the wisdom, he wields as much of the law as he can grasp. Purely physical may that devotion be, centered in the flesh, in lust for gold, in possessions, and greed. He bends all his energies to the search for the satisfaction of that concrete form, and therein learns. Purely astral may be the aim of the devotee, love for wife or child, family, pride, race, love, popularity, or lust of some kind. So then he devotes the whole of his energy using the physical body to fulfill the desire of the astral.
Let's see. We'll go on.
Higher still may be the form of his devotion, love of art, science or philosophy, the life religious, scientific or artistic. So then he consecrates his energies, physical, astral and mental, and always the form is that of devotion.
Mm-hmm.
Always the vibration measures up to the goal, finds that goal, passes it, and disintegrates.
So, you kind of see the Sagittarius thing entering there. Let's deal with that. It is interesting, and DK knows it's an unusual phrase. He's basically saying we are all devotees. Doesn't make any difference what ray we're on. Whether we have second ray astral, sixth ray astral, no sixth ray, whatever, we have all the rays, we're all devotees. Have you thought about what may be the form of your devotion? Because he's telling us that we are living for something. We have an ideal, an image, a pattern, something the imagination suggests to us. We're moving towards it. Maybe it's not so articulated in our mind. It might be a small objective, or it might be something larger next, or larger. Have you passed through phases of your life when you could recognize that you were devoted to different things? That your attention centered itself on different kinds of objectives, and you bent your energies to those objectives, and then later changed your objective. So something lures you on. You know, I'm reminded of that marvelous little paragraph about the sixth ray, where he says, let all desire cease, let aspiration end. The search is over. Let the soul realize that it has reached its goal, and from that gateway to eternal life and cosmic peace, let the word sound, I am the seeker and the sought, I rest. You know, it turns out we've been looking for ourselves all the time. From one thing to another, we look, we invest all our attention, and it fails to satisfy, and we go on to the next thing. And that's the whole story of planetary, systemic, and cosmic desire. On and on to the next thing. Until finally we find the self. And we discover that the self is what we've been looking for all along. But right now, at this time, something lures you on, doesn't it? Right at this moment.
But this also means that we live in the past because we create a goal.
Yeah.
This goal is manifested as a form,
Yeah.
so within us.
Yeah.
Then we think and feel and express ourselves within that prison.
Until we get tired of it.
Yeah.
Until we get tired.
So we create a prison,
Yeah.
disrupt it, create a new prison, disrupt it.
Absolutely. Look, anything is a prison. Ultimately.
But it's very interesting
Yeah.
how strong the form is
Yeah.
when we look at those lines,
And-
because
yeah.
it means that
Yeah.
we actually live in the past.
Well, we certainly are. When you say it's the past, we think of it as ahead. And
But the idea is created in the past.
Yeah.
They create the
form,
present form.
and we stay with that form for a while, living in the idea that created the form, because the form is an idea, but then we decide Saturn is not good enough. In other words, now Uranus comes in and breaks the form, says, I'm tired of it. You know, because the spirit will always get tired of form. Always. It's called divine discontent. So, but right now, could you trace in your own life, this very minute, what is the form of the devotee for you? I'm trying to think, you know. Form of the devotee.
What now?
Right this very minute. Because he's saying you've got one right now. You have something, a form, not necessarily physical plane. It can be an astral form. It can be a mental ideal. It can be some sort of imagined state.
So it can be altruistic in nature.
Absolutely. Oh yes, it doesn't have to be. Devoted to human welfare, whatever, you know.
Right.
Devoted to the service of humanity. Well, how many of us devoted to the that's the form of the devotee right there. Yes.
But if we learn to live in the present. There is no past and future.
Okay. That of course is a great truism. It is profoundly true. But on the way to doing that is, I think, a real, they say, well, live in the eternal now. I said, well, it's very simple. Just live in the eternal now and know the self as one. No problem. You have a 3rd degree initiation. Just do it. But what kind of consciousness, what can get us into the consciousness where that formula which you just gave, which is true, also is realized completely as true? Yeah.
I think we see some people
who do that, sure.
Who do that.
Sure. Like I say, this man, Eckhart Tolle, he's gone around the world telling people about this. At least you have to know it's important for him. Yes.
But another interesting thing is that even when we aspire spiritually, we build forms.
Yes.
And what I think is a great problem is Eckhart Tolle issue, because too many spiritually minded people don't think.
Yeah.
So it's better to create a form, like the reappearance of the Christ, any
Sure.
idea, create it, it gives a direction, it gives speed, and then destroy it.
Yeah.
But if people think they are certainly initiates, I don't need to think, it's better to stay in the present. Where is their initiatives? Where is their plan?
Exactly.
Where is their thinking?
And even the planetary logos doesn't do that. Even the solar logos doesn't do that. These great beings, who also know what the eternal now is, they manage to blend the eternal now with time-space objectives. Remember, we're told somewhere that if we don't get group initiation, the time-space schedule of the planetary logos will be thrown off. Well, wait, he's living in the eternal now. He doesn't have a time-space schedule. Or does he? See, a master is not an impractical person. And the planetary logos has a whole planet to run in time and space, and is of course living in some kind of eternal now. So we have to do both. Yes.
Surely the plan. Surely the plan is something that is a form. The plan.
Absolutely. The plan is a configuration of energies constructed by the hierarchy as it responds to the purpose which is impressed upon them. And it will change. The plan changes. The purpose doesn't change, the plan does change. Yes.
Just like the ideas of Christ, new ideas, self-sacrifice, etc. A huge thought form created by hierarchy.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this gives a direction.
Well, I'm glad you said the reappearance of the Christ, because so many of us in this field, for us, that is the form of the devotee. We say, well, what's the most important thing? What are you consecrating, dedicating yourself towards? It's above all the reappearance of the Christ at this time. So that is a certain form of images, expectations, thoughts. They all go together, and towards that thing, that form, our energies are inclined. Yes. But yes, you were going to say first it was Anna and then Lona.
But can't you think and then at the same time live in the moment?
Yes.
Because I think we
Yes.
I think
That's just what I was saying.
feeling that sometimes we're living in the moment.
Yeah.
Of course that moment disappears. But you have the feeling that it's possible now and then.
Yeah, well, it is a big problem in philosophy, this question of whether a moment even exists. But in general, if I was to be pragmatic, I would say yes. You can live in the moment and still carry on your time-space work.
And I don't think you stop thinking. Maybe you even think more.
Well, maybe a student of these things, such as we are, would know better. But I think what Asger's pointing to is there's a lot of people that don't like to use their mind, and they're getting a wonderful excuse now to just hang out, and not really have to worry about time and space because they're living in the now. So there is a problem.
I don't think Eckhart Tolle says that you don't need to sing. Do you think it's a sleeping?
Look, I couldn't say. I only heard him talk one time. He looks like a thinker to me. He is thinking. He looks like an old monk to me. Yeah.
Maybe it's more how people apply Eckhart Tolle, but I think it's a very big issue now, because we need now both to let go, but also we need to be directed. And I tend to see a little like, who are the disciples in all this issue? They are those who keep ideas and directions. And who in the whole New Age community, etc., don't think that is important. That's those who are not disciples. I'm not sure, but I think it's a very important issue.
Yeah. Well, look, even Eckhart Tolle is thinking enough to take his message all around the world. You know what I mean? He's directing himself through time and space, doing concrete things, while he just look. Here, I just want to ask you: can buddhi manas be sustained at the same time? And of course, I think, obviously, it's got to be. So, can we walk and chew gum at the same time? Yes, we can have intuition and we can have thought at the same time. Absolutely. All right, well, okay, Julie, did you have something?
Yeah, well, I work with people, I know that there could be this, that it could be a big avoidance, people not just, wanting to be in the here and now, but I work with people when guilt and shame comes in, and getting them to work to be in the here and now, rather than worrying about, I know it has to be dealt with, but rather than this guilt of what happened in the past.
Yes, that's a very,
And I think that is a lot of what he means.
Yes.
Rather than the big avoidance, like you say, perhaps people who think they're on the third degree initiative or whatever. I think it's a way of working with people.
I think it's very, very important because people obsess about the past.
Yes.
And then they don't go anywhere.
Yeah, they can't move
forward. Yeah. But so as a therapeutic technique, of course, one has to, and it really, something I never forgot, well, I have to paraphrase it, was that the mental institutions are filled with people who have forgotten how to forget. You know what I mean? Because that obsession about the trauma that happened, they remember all those things, and the impossibility of living in the moment is there. No healthy life is possible. So that I see that too good a memory sometimes roots you in the past. It's almost like the problem between Ray 3 and Ray 4. Ray 3 is the Lord of memory. It remembers everything, always looking backwards, except when it's looking forward. Okay, but the fourth ray is the ray that loves the spontaneity of living in the moment. And there's this difficult transition between the concrete manas of the past and the intuition of the present. Both have to be done. It seems that we're on to a conversation here. Okay, yes. Okay, well then we'll do 1 and 2. Yes, go ahead.
So the issue between Eckhart Tolle and Seva, that must be an issue of balance. And who is at which time?
Who is?
Yeah. Who is adapting the living in the present and when?
Yes.
And when do we need to be more goal-oriented?
Yes.
And about this, it must be about refining our ideas all the time, so that they follow the time.
Yes, I think the discrimination is there. Okay, Lona, you had?
I'd like to say, the form of the devotee, it is what we are building into each person. It is building into his system.
Exactly.
And that's extremely important.
Yeah. And this form is always in our look. A person could even be devoted to living in the eternal now. It could be. Yes.
There could be Christ consciousness.
Yeah, it could be anything. Look, the point is, we have to ask ourselves, what is it? what's drawing us on here? Every person is a devotee. Every person of every degree has his devotion. What is yours? That's what the Tibetan is basically saying here. So it would be worth a meditation on this. It would be interesting, I think. Yes?
And that idea of living in the eternal now could also be an imprisonment.
Sure. If it's just the idea of it rather than doing it.
But it's time to do it, but maybe the soul wants to do otherwise.
Well, okay. You know what it is. You know why this is such an interesting discussion, is because people like ourselves are hovering on the borderland of Buddhi-manas. We are monastic, seeking to be Buddhic, and we're trying to figure out how we can bridge these two things. This is our cutting edge. And Manas calls us back and Buddhi calls us forward, and how do we live in both worlds? Obviously, again, it's a compromise. I think it's both. All right, well, let's pretend like we're moving on. So he bends all his energies to the search for the satisfaction of that concrete form. And it is concrete because it's kind of a mental image of what you're looking for. A mental image of that which you seek. And I shouldn't just call it mental, I should call it mental, creative, imaginative. Purely astral may be the aim, etc., etc., etc. So anyway, all I'm counseling us for, what is our goal? What is the form we have created of the thing or state or whatever toward which we are moving? You know, for me, like I could say, hey, it's a school. You know, it's a school that reflects DK's curriculum. That might be, for me, the form of the devotee. I think about it all the time. What would this school be like, and how would it do that, and how can it reflect, and how is it related? And I've built up a whole thought form to which I give my energies. I had other forms. Once I wanted to be a singer, you know. For years, that was the form of the devotee. And I saw this role and that role and this voice and this operatic production, and I was entirely giving my energy to that. So just question yourself for the moment. I don't mean you have to do it now. But what is the concrete form to which you direct your energies? Because he says you have one. Okay?
Yes, and when we have built that form, there will come an exchange between ourselves here and now and the form. So we will, there will be a
rapport
play between our form and who we are. Yes. Between our form and who we are. And yes.
But we will always eventually find that the form is not the thing. That's what he tells us here.
Yes, but the form will give us something back.
Yes.
We have to adjust to that.
Okay. But it can't go on forever, right? It goes on for a while. For a while. Until you just get tired of it.
That's a prison for me.
Yeah, until you discover it is a prison. No matter how high it is. You know, I'm reminded, was it George Bernard Shaw, the English author, he said, there are two great tragedies in life. The first occurs when a man fails to achieve his goal. The second occurs when he achieves his goal. You know what I mean? It's never what you think it is. And then some people commit suicide. They say, is this all there is? But they don't have the Sagittarian attitude, okay? I see the goal, I reach the goal, and then I reach another. Okay. Pain enters into all shattering of the form and changing of the key. This is interesting, because sometimes when you have a bad modulation, it's really painful in music, you know. So this is vibration again. Changing vibration is pain. And why is that? Why is that? Let me put it in musical terms. Because as you change, you go through a period of dissonance. When you are out of tune with where you were and out of tune with where you're going. And it is a very cacophonous, dissonant moment, and dissonance is separation. Dissonance is pain. Yeah, okay.
It is a crisis situation.
Crisis? Okay, sure. Because, crises are those moments of change. Look, let's just put it like this. Transition is often painful. Okay, look, you're getting a divorce. All right. You're happily married. Now you're not happily married. Now you're getting a divorce. You're unhappy. Now it's 10 years or 5 years or whatever since you got your divorce, and now you're happy again. What's that all about? The transition moments are the hard ones because you're between things, and you cannot harmonize with either situation. You're not where you want to be yet. You're away from where you used to be, where you were harmonious. Transitions are difficult. And the skill, now more music, okay? The skill comes in making a modulation beautiful. A modulation is when you change keys. You're going along in music. So Bach was a master at this. He could go from any key to any key skillfully. Now, some of the cruder...
With marriage?
Interesting that you should ask. Okay. I'm sure there are some people who have mastered the art. But, some keys, when you change musical keys, they're very hard to get to another key because they're not so related. Bach, who I think was a great fourth ray soul, with second ray, found the way to move from key to key smoothly and harmoniously. And that is what human beings don't usually have. The ability, we call it a modulation, a change of key. And there are certain rules for modulation in harmony. You always have to find chords that are related to both keys. And the chord that is related to both keys can be your pivot point to move from one to the other. This is a science in itself, and it's a great fourth ray science. Okay, yes?
Isn't that the program for the peacemaker?
Yes, it could be applied in many different fourth ray areas. But the musical analogy is somehow archetypal, and all the other things follow suit, I think. So I think it's most interesting. We call it in music a chord progression. A chord progression means chord A, B, C, D, you're home. What Bach could do, even if it was 7 chords that were needed to get from A to B, he could find those chords which made everything seem natural. Now sometimes it's very easy. If you have related keys, it just takes one chord that is common to them both, and you can go from one to the other just like that. But if you have very dissonant keys, so you have trouble finding the relation between the two keys, it takes great skill to do this. And I think it's an archetype for how to bridge difficult situations, as you are saying. And look at what time it is. It's 4:44. Perfect. All right. Look at that as symbolic. Many lives for millennia of years are spent under the lower vibrations. As evolution progresses, more rapid is the development, and the key changes from life to life. You might almost say, the ray changes from life to life. Whereas in the earlier stages, one key or tone might sound for several lives in their entirety. As a man nears the path, this is funny, the probationary path becomes strewn with many shattered forms. And from lesser cycle to lesser cycle, he changes key. Now, there was a book called The Last 5 Lives of Annie Besant. It was not about reincarnation. It was about 5 incarnations in one incarnation. So here we have heightening of vibration several times in one life. Have you found that this is the case for you? Perhaps? Changing of key? Your midlife crisis, by the way, which I'm sure you earned, is a changing of key. And DK tells us on page 335 of Psych 2, one of my favorite pages, what happens when you change from your personality ray to your soul ray and the kind of crisis you experience. That's a change of key. Literally, because every ray has its note and every key has its keynote. So if you're sounding, say you're a third ray personality and a second ray soul, which is it's often found. You're sounding the note F, the green note, for many of your years. And now you have to make a transition to the note G. You're going to sound the soul note, the second ray note, G. Now you know what's interesting. Sometimes while you're making this transition, both notes are sounding at the same time. And even at equal volume. And if they are dissonant to begin with, you're going to have a lot of dissonance in your life. In other words, I'll give you an example. Suppose I was a fourth ray personality going to a second ray soul. I would be sounding the yellow note, do, re, mi. That would be my note. And then I would go, do, re, mi, fa, sol. Mi, sol, mi, sol. It's a third, it's a third. It's harmonious. If I'm trying to go from a fourth ray personality to a second ray soul, the two notes that are sounding at the same time are harmonious. But it's not always the case. It depends on what ray is going into what ray. So people's transitions can be difficult or easy depending on whether they're on the same ray line or not. This is not totally a science yet, okay? But it gives an indication of dissonance in transition and pain in transition. It's basically a fourth ray theme. And every time you're changing your key, how many times have you done that in your life? Anybody changed once? At least once. Okay? Anybody changed twice? Okay? Anybody changed 3 times? Really? Okay. So, just analyze your life in terms of key changes. I can, yes.
I think there's certain laws from which way to which way we are differentiated.
Okay.
You can't go from every way to every.
Well, wait.
There's certain laws.
There's a law, but the law has to do with how the soul ray changes. And the transition from the personality ray to the soul ray can be anything. But the transition of rays within the soul, there's a law.
Only in the soul?
Yeah, only in the soul.
You think you can do play all 7?
Absolutely. In your personality you can go from anything to anything. And within the mind, most people are limited to 1, 4, and 5. But they could conceivably go from any ray to any ray, because all 7 rays can be in the mind. DK gave example of all of them.
If we are going to change the ray of personality, I think it's coming from the soul. It's the purpose is service.
Okay.
If we are changing the personality rays for the sake of the personality,
No, it wouldn't be.
That's not possible.
It wouldn't be for no reason. The reason can be service, but we're talking about can you move from one number to another. But look, here it's simple. You can have a soul of any ray and a personality of any ray, and any of those personality rays can gradually give place to the soul ray. You're not really changing rays, all you do is changing emphasis. See what I mean? Show me what you cannot do. Look, I could be a 5th ray personality, and from my 5th ray personality, I could begin to emphasize the first ray, second ray, third ray, fourth ray, fifth ray, sixth ray, seventh ray soul. Any one of them. My fifth ray personality would get weaker, and my whatever ray soul would get stronger. And that's all I'm talking about. I'm not talking so much about changing the ray of the vehicle.
That's alignment, though, isn't it? That's what we...
Yes, but it's painful.
Of course.
People go through hell when they try to emphasize their soul ray instead of their personality ray. He tells us of the terrible battle that can go on even more than one life in this. So how do you make that smooth transition? How do you do it? And I think, as in all peacemaking efforts, you find something they have in common, which is good for both. And then you gradually take the emphasis away from the personality and put it... I think if I were to draw it out on paper, you would see the possibility. In other words, there's no personality ray that cannot move towards its soul ray. And all I'm saying, though, is as it moves, sometimes two notes are playing at the same time. Now this gets into another musical factor called dynamics. And very simply it means loud and soft. Right now, for average man, two notes are playing, and the personality ray is pounding, and the soul ray is very faint. See? So when the two notes are sounding together, you hear, oh my gosh, that personality note is so loud and I can hardly hear that soul note. Okay, so now the person starts to get a little more spiritual, and before long the two notes are playing at equal volume. Now the person gets still more spiritual, and now it's the soul note that is strong, and you don't hear the personality note very much anymore. It's just like a subtone. See the analogy? Now when we reach a certain age, 50, 60, 70, whatever, our soul ray should be emergent. How loud is our personality ray compared with the sound of the soul ray? That's something else you can ask yourself. Is my soul ray sounding strongly and my personality ray appropriately secondary? Or is my personality ray still screaming while my soul ray is trying to make itself heard? This is another way of approaching the transition issue. Alright, well, here we have a story of transition and of the form of the devotee, which got us started on this, and of the shattered forms we experience as we change keys. Now look, every time you change a job, it's not the same as changing keys. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
Is there a cycle? Is that related to the planet cycles? Or I was also thinking about the Vedic traditions when they have these 9 years and 7 years cycles.
And that's generic. That's generic too, isn't it? In other words, that applies to like everyone, but then every one of us is unique. So our moment of change will come at a unique time, astrologically appropriate, and maybe in some kind of ray cycle language. I gave a lecture at the conference on how to look at the rays that rule every year of your life. Not just the signs and the planets, but how to take the numerical value of any year you're passing through and see its relation to ray cycles. And I think that maybe according to some of those numbers, changes can occur. It's a form of cyclic numerology, you might say. It's just beginning for me. I'm just trying to figure it out. Yeah.
I think there is a function in solar fire where you can do it.
Okay, I'm all for finding out. I'm all for finding out. So look, let's just finish this one part. See therefore how the life of all aspirants, if progressing with the desired rapidity, is one of constant movement, constant changes and differentiations, and continuous building and breaking, planning and seeing those plans disrupted. Sounds a lot like the mutable cross, doesn't it? The cross, what is the mutable cross called? Cross of many changes. It is a life of ceaseless suffering, of frequent clashing with the environing circumstances, of numerous friendships made and transferred. He chooses his words very carefully. Of mutual, ceaseless, mutation ceaseless, and consequent agony. Because every transition implies dissonance unless you're extremely skillful. Now I just want to put that down. Every transition implies temporary dissonance, except for those who are very skillful. Ideals are transcended only to be found to be stations on the road to still higher ideals. Visions are seen only to be replaced by others. Dreams are dreamt only to be realized and discarded. Friends are made to be loved and left behind, and to follow later and more slowly in the footsteps of the striving aspirant. And all the time, the fourth form is being built, the form of the causal body. This is the vehicle of the higher consciousness, the temple of the indwelling God, who is the monad, which seems of a beauty so rare and of a stability so sure a nature that when the final shattering comes of even that masterpiece of many lives, bitter indeed is the cup to drink, because, of course, the causal body is a cup, sometimes called the chalice. Okay. And unutterably bereft seems the unit of consciousness. Bereft means everything's taken away from you. Conscious then only of the innate divine spirit, conscious only of the truth of the Godhead, realizing profoundly into the depths of his being the ephemeral nature of the form and of all forms, standing alone in the vortex of initiatory rites, bereft of all on which he may have leaned, be it the friend, master, doctrine, or environment, it's all taken away. Well might the initiate cry out, I am that I am, and there is naught else. So I call that a mantram of freedom, a freeing mantram. Well may he then figuratively place his hand in that of his Father in heaven, and hold the other out in blessing on the world of men. It's a bit like, blessing with one hand, holding with another. For only the hands that have let slip all within the three worlds are free to carry the ultimate blessing to struggling humanity. Then he builds for himself a form such as he desires, a new form that is no longer subject to shattering, but suffices for his need to be discarded or used as occasion warrants. And obviously this is not the causal body, but the Maya Virupa, the body of illusion, the vehicle of the Master, which comes and goes as he pleases, appearing, disappearing. When Master Kuthumi walked into Alice Bailey's study when she was 15 years old, he had not just taken an airplane or a boat. He had that which he needed to appear at a point that he needed to appear. I think in the teaching of Don Juan it's called something like an assemblage point. assembly or assemblage point. The point around which you can gather whatever matter you need to put in an appearance. So that's the fifth form. The Mayavarupa, the fifth form. Okay. And I think...
Still what he desire is a master, but he has the desire of this Mayavarupa.
It sounds like, well, look, you can't get rid of desire. Desire is a cosmic principle. Master Morya deals with that too. He says you cannot extinguish desire, rather choose those desires which are goal fit. Even the solar logos has desire. And then you have to question yourself, what about the one and only God? Did that God not desire to manifest as a universe which was himself? So you can't get rid of big D desire. But you can certainly measure your desires and make sure they continue, what did DK say? Reorient them. Redirect them. Make sure they are fit for a higher goal. You could ask yourself right now, what time is it? You can ask yourself right now, I know, it's 5:02. So let's just have one Om for the road. And then all you that want to eat, you can all go eat. And then we'll leave in various cars and we'll see what happens. Okay, everyone. Good. Thank you. And we'll start tomorrow. We'll see what we meditate on tomorrow. We didn't get as far today as I thought, but we don't have that much to go. Maybe when we get back from the Theosophical Society, we can come and get me.
If you dare.
Oh.
Have a good evening, Michael, won't you? I'm dead.
Thank you.
Not
Thank you.
literally, of course.
Yeah, well, the
Only
unresponsive audience.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
We'll be thinking of you and sending you lots of...
Well, send me lots of rays.
Okay.
Although I promise to stop at 7. You know, I know that some people think there are 12 and all the rest of it, but...
Oh, sorry. Oh.